There's a symmetry in the laws of physics that's almost perfect. Almost. You can run most equations backward and forward and they work just fine. Electrons, gravity, motion, time doesn't care which direction you point. Except for one thing. One tiny, stubborn exception that breaks the whole beautiful pattern. And that exception? It's everywhere. It's in your coffee getting cold. It's in your body aging. It's in every breath you take. The universe has a direction, and it's not because of some cosmic rule written in the sky. It's because of cups breaking. And that changes everything about what's possible. Now, I know what you're thinking. You've heard about time travel. You've seen the movies, read the stories, maybe even read some pop science articles about wormholes or rotating black holes or quantum this and that. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you've got this idea that time travel is impossible right now, sure. But maybe someday, with the right technology, with some clever trick we haven't thought of yet, maybe then we could do it. Maybe then we could go back. And I'm here to tell you something that might disappoint you at first, but I promise by the end of this, it's going to give you something better than false hope. Time travel backward isn't a matter of engineering. It's not waiting for better technology. It's not about finding enough energy or discovering some loophole in the equations. It's impossible in a much deeper, much more fundamental way. And the reason why tells us something profound about what it means to be alive, to remember, to exist in this universe at all. See, you've been lied to. Not by the science fiction writers. They're just trying to tell good stories. And I love a good story. You've been lied to by the way we talk about physics itself. We make it sound like time is just another dimension, like space. We say space-time as if time is just another direction you could walk in if you had the right vehicle. We talk about Einstein and relativity and bending space-time, and we make it sound like the only thing stopping you from visiting yesterday is that we haven't figured out the trick yet. But that's not the real barrier. The real barrier is something you witness every single day of your life and never think twice about. It's something so ordinary, so mundane, that it's invisible. And yet, it's the most powerful force governing your entire existence. It's called entropy. And entropy is why you can't go home again. Not metaphorically, literally, physically, thermodynamically. Let me tell you what entropy really is, and why it matters more than anything else when we talk about time. Entropy is often described as disorder, and that's fine as far as it goes. But it's not quite right. Entropy is really about possibilities. It's about how many different ways the atoms and molecules in a system can be arranged, while still looking basically the same from the outside. High entropy means there are a lot of ways to arrange things. Low entropy means there are very few ways. Think about it like this. You've got a bedroom. When it's perfectly clean, everything in its place. That's low entropy. There's basically one way for it to be that clean. Everything in exactly the right spot. But a messy room? There are millions of ways for a room to be messy. Clothes on the floor here, or over there, or draped on the chair, or half under the bed. Books scattered this way, that way, any which way. You see what I'm saying? There are vastly more messy configurations than clean ones. That's entropy. That's the difference between special and generic, between ordered and disordered, between rare and common. And here's the thing about the universe. It's always, always, always moving from special configurations to generic ones, from rare to common, from ordered to disordered, from low entropy to high entropy. Not because there's a law that says, thou shalt increase entropy, but because it's a statistical fact. If you have a system that can be in a million different states, and only one of those states is organized, then random changes are going to push you toward the other 999,999 states. Every single time. It's just math. It's just probability. This is what we call the second law of thermodynamics, and it's the closest thing physics has to an absolute certainty. Entropy increases, disorder increases, the special becomes generic. The organized becomes chaotic. And this right here, is the arrow of time. This is why time has a direction. not because of some mystical property of time itself, but because the universe started out in an incredibly special, incredibly low entropy state, the Big Bang, and it's been evening out ever since. We're living in the aftermath of that initial specialness, watching it slowly, inexorably dissolve into randomness. Now here's where it connects to time travel, and here's where your heart might sink a little bit, but stay with me. To travel backward in time, really backward, not just to look at old photographs or remember things, but to actually go back and exist in a previous moment, you would need to reverse entropy. Not just for you, but for everything you interact with. You'd need every molecule of air you displaced to find its way back to where it was, every photon of light that bounced off your body to return to its source, every sound wave you created to unpropagate, every bit of heat you generated to flow backward into you. You'd need the entire universe, or at least your entire causal past, to run in reverse. And here's the statistical reality of that. It's not impossible the way a law forbids something. It's impossible the way flipping a coin 1,000,000,000 times and getting heads every single time is impossible. Could it happen? Technically, yes. Will it happen? No. Not in the lifetime of the universe. Not in 1,000,000,000,000 lifetimes of the universe. The odds are so monumentally, incomprehensibly against it that calling it impossible is actually being generous. Let me make this concrete for you because I think abstractions don't really hit you in the gut the way they should. Let's talk about something simple, something you've seen happen 1,000 times and never thought about. Let's talk about a cup breaking. Picture this. I'm standing in my kitchen one morning, and there's a ceramic cup sitting on the edge of the counter. It's blue, hand-painted, one of those cups you pick up at a craft fair and use every day until it becomes part of your routine. I reach for it, my hand fumbles. I'm not fully awake yet, you know how it is, and the cup tips over the edge. For a fraction of a second, it's in free fall, and my brain registers what's about to happen, but my hand can't move fast enough to catch it. And then it hits the tile floor, and it shatters. Not just breaks, shatters, into 47 pieces. I know because I counted them when I was sweeping up. Now, in that moment, something irreversible happened. And I don't mean irreversible in the sense that it would be hard to glue it back together, though it would be. I mean irreversible in a much deeper sense. The universe just moved from one configuration, cup whole, sitting on the edge of the counter, to a different configuration, cup broken, 47 pieces scattered across the floor. And here's the thing, there are vastly, overwhelmingly, incomprehensibly more ways for a cup to be broken than for it to be whole. Think about it. When the cup is whole, all the molecules have to be arranged in one very specific pattern. The clay particles have to be bonded in exactly the right way. The shape has to be maintained. There's basically one way for it to be that specific cup. But broken? Oh, there are so many ways to be broken. 47 pieces, or 48, or 46. Big pieces here, small shards there. Scattered in this pattern or that pattern. Rotated this way or that way. Even at the molecular level, the crack patterns could go 1,000,000 different ways. The number of possible broken configurations is astronomically larger than the number of whole configurations. So when the cup falls and shatters, what's really happening is that it's transitioning from a rare, special, low entropy state, wholeness, to one of the vastly more common, generic, high entropy states, brokenness. And statistically, overwhelmingly, the universe always makes that transition, from special to generic, from low entropy to high. That's the arrow. That's time's direction, expressed in ceramic shards on a kitchen floor. Now here's where it gets really interesting. After the cup breaks, I'm standing there looking at the pieces, and I have this feeling. You know the feeling. It's not just annoyance or regret about losing the cup. It's something deeper. It's the immediate visceral knowledge that I will never drink from that cup again, that this is permanent, that something is gone. And that feeling, that sense of irreversibility, that's not just emotion, that's your nervous system registering a truth about thermodynamics. That's you feeling the arrow of time. Because here's what would have to happen for that cup to spontaneously reassemble. all 47 pieces would have to, by random thermal motion, happen to move in exactly the right directions, at exactly the right speeds, and collide in exactly the right orientations to bond back together. The shattered molecular bonds would have to happen to reform in precisely the original configuration. The kinetic energy of the impact would have to flow backward out of the scattered pieces and into the cup as a whole, lifting it up off the floor and setting it gently back on the counter. Every sound wave from the crash would have to converge back on the impact site. Every tiny bit of heat generated by the friction and deformation would have to flow backward. What are the odds of this happening? Well, let's think about it. We're talking about billions of molecules, all of which would have to spontaneously coordinate their motion in the right way. If we calculated the actual probability, we'd get a number so small you couldn't write it down with all the atoms in the observable universe as digits. It's not just unlikely. It's so unlikely that it defines what we mean by impossible. And yet, and this is the beautiful, strange thing, the fundamental laws of physics don't actually forbid it. Newton's laws of motion work just as well backward as forward. If you could reverse the velocity of every single particle in the universe at once, the cup would reassemble. The coffee would flow back into it, and time would run backward, and you'd never know it, because your brain would run backward too, and you'd unremember the whole thing. The equations don't care. The equations are symmetric. So where does the asymmetry come from? Where does the arrow of time come from, if not from the laws themselves? It comes from the initial conditions. It comes from the fact that the universe started in a very special, very low entropy state at the Big Bang. And ever since then, it's been exploring all the vastly more numerous high entropy states available to it. We're riding the wave of that initial specialness dissolving into genericness. And that wave only goes one direction because there are so many more generic states than special ones. Let me give you another way to think about this, because I want you to really feel the weight of these numbers. Imagine you've got a deck of cards and it's in perfect order. Ace of spades, two of spades, three of spades, all the way up through the suits in sequence. That's a low entropy state. There's one way to be in that exact order. Now you shuffle the deck once. How many possible shuffled arrangements are there? The answer is 52 factorial. That's 52 times 51 times 50 times 49, all the way down to 1. If you calculate it out, it's about 8 times 10 to the 67th power. That's an 8 followed by 67 zeros. To give you a sense of how big that number is, if you shuffled a deck of cards once per second, every second since the Big Bang, that's about 13.8 billion years, you would have done about 4 times 10 to the 17th shuffles. You wouldn't even be close to exploring all the possible arrangements. Not even remotely close. You'd have sampled a tiny, infinitesimal fraction of the possibility space. And here's the kicker. If you shuffled randomly, what are the chances you'd ever see that original ordered arrangement again? Essentially 0. Not actually 0, but so close to 0 that the difference doesn't matter. That's your life. That's every moment you've ever lived. You're starting from a relatively ordered state, a living body, organized cells, structured memories, coherent thoughts, and every passing moment is a shuffle. Molecules mix and don't unmix. Cells divide and age and die. Neural pathways fire and change. Memories form and fade. You're constantly transitioning from the relatively special configuration you were a moment ago to one of the vastly more numerous configurations available to you in the next moment. And statistically, overwhelmingly, you never ever shuffle back to a previous state. The arrow of time is just the fact that there are more ways to be shuffled than to be ordered. This is what's happening in your coffee cup right now as it cools. The hot coffee molecules are spreading their energy out into the room, into the air, into the ceramic. There are vastly more ways for that energy to be spread out than concentrated in the liquid. So it spreads. It always spreads. It never spontaneously unspreads and makes the coffee hot again. Not because heat can't flow from cold to hot. It can, in principle, but because the number of molecular configurations where it does that is so vanishingly small compared to the number where it doesn't, that you'll never, ever see it happen. And this is happening in your body, too. Right now, as you sit there listening to me, your cells are burning glucose, generating heat, creating entropy. You're radiating warmth into the world. You're breathing out carbon dioxide that will never spontaneously reassemble into oxygen and sugar. You're aging. Your telomeres are shortening. Your proteins are degrading. Your DNA is accumulating tiny errors. You're moving from the special ordered state of youth to the more generic disordered state of age. And eventually you'll move to the most generic state of all, which is death, which is just the state where your body's molecules are no longer organized enough to maintain the patterns we call life. This sounds grim, I know. It sounds like I'm telling you that everything is falling apart and there's nothing you can do about it. And in a sense, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Everything is falling apart. The technical term is heat death. Eventually, the universe will reach maximum entropy, where every bit of energy is evenly distributed, where there are no more gradients, no more differences, no more organization, and therefore no more life, no more thought, no more anything. Just a thin, cold, uniform soup of particles that will persist for eternity without change. That's where the arrow of time is pointing. That's the ultimate destination. But before you sink into existential despair, let me tell you why this is actually beautiful. Why this is actually the most important thing you could possibly understand about being alive. Because here's the thing. Without the arrow of time, without entropy, you couldn't exist at all. Not even in principle. Memory requires the arrow of time. Think about what it means to remember something. It means that some event in the past caused a change in your brain. Neurons fired, connections strengthened, proteins were synthesized, and that change persists into the present. That's a record. That's information stored in the physical structure of your brain. But creating that record requires energy. It generates heat. It increases entropy. Memory only works in one direction because recording is thermodynamically irreversible. If time ran backward, your memories would unform, the proteins would unsynthesize, the neural connections would unstrengthen. The record would be erased. You wouldn't experience going backward through time because you wouldn't remember the future you came from. You'd just be in the past experiencing it forward for the first time again. There's no such thing as remembering forward. Memory is fundamentally asymmetric in time, and it's not just memory. Causation itself requires the arrow of time. We say that A causes B, that striking a match causes it to light, that dropping a cup causes it to break. But what we really mean is that A comes before B in time, and A's occurrence makes B more likely. The arrow of causation points the same direction as the arrow of time, and both of them point in the direction of increasing entropy. The match lights because combustion is a high entropy process. The cup breaks because there are more ways to be broken. So here's the profound thing. You are not separate from the arrow of time. You are a manifestation of it. Your ability to think, to remember, to experience one moment following another. All of that is the arrow of time expressing itself through the particular organization of molecules we call your body and brain. You are a temporary eddy in the universal flow from order to disorder. A little pocket where complexity and organization arise for a brief while before dissolving back into the general chaos. And the fact that you can know this, can understand this, can reflect on your own temporariness, that's maybe the most beautiful and strange thing in the entire universe. Now let's bring this back to time travel, because I want you to see why all of this makes backward time travel not just difficult but meaningless in a deep way. Imagine you had a time machine. Imagine you could somehow generate enough energy, manipulate space-time in the right way, and transport yourself physically to the year 1995. What would that mean? What would that look like? Well, first, you'd have to reverse the entropy of your entire body. Every cell would have to unage back to its 1995 configuration. Every memory you've formed since then would have to unform. You'd arrive in 1995 with no knowledge of anything that happened after, because those memories are physically encoded in neural structures that didn't exist in 1995. So the you that arrives wouldn't be the you that left. It would be the you from 1995, experiencing 1995 for the first time. There's no sense in which you've gone back, because the information that constitutes your present self can't exist in that past state. But it's worse than that, because you're not thermodynamically isolated. You're constantly exchanging energy and particles with your environment. So, to put you back in 1995, we'd also have to put back every bit of air you've breathed since then, every photon that's bounced off you, every sound wave you've created. We'd have to reverse the entropy of everything in your causal past, which is, basically, the entire universe. We'd have to unburn every log that's been burned, unmix every drink that's been stirred, unbreak every cup that's been broken between now and 1995. And even if we could do that, even if we had the godlike power to reach into the universe and set every particle's velocity in reverse, what would happen is that the universe would run backward for A, while we'd reach 1995, and then what? It would just keep running backward unless we stopped it. And if we stopped it and let it run forward again, it would just re-evolve forward toward the present. You wouldn't experience any of this as time travel. You'd just experience time running forward from 1995 onward, same as before, with no memory of the future, because that information doesn't exist in the 1995 state. Do you see what I'm getting at? Time travel backward is not just technologically impossible. It's conceptually incoherent given what we know about entropy and information. The past is not a place you can visit, because the past is not a place. It's a configuration of matter and energy that no longer exists. It's been scrambled. It's been mixed. It's been incorporated into the high entropy present. The information that defined that moment has been radiated away as heat, dispersed into the environment, lost forever to the randomness of thermal motion. You know what the past really is. It's a memory. It's a low-fidelity record stored in your brain, in photographs, in written documents, in geological strata, in the cosmic microwave background radiation. But it's not the thing itself. The thing itself is gone. It's become something else. And there's no way to unbecome, no way to unscramble the egg, no way to reassemble the broken cup, no way to extract the original signal from the noise it's dissolved into. And here's where we get to something I think you need to hear, something that might actually come as a relief, even though it sounds harsh at first. You cannot go back to who you were. You cannot unsay the words you said. You cannot unmake the choices you made. You cannot return to the version of yourself that existed before the trauma, before the loss, before the mistake, before the change. That person is gone, not metaphorically, thermodynamically. The specific configuration of molecules and memories and neural patterns that made you that person, you have become someone else, and you will keep becoming someone else with every passing moment, and there is no mechanism in physics that will reverse this. Now, I know that might hurt to hear, especially if you're carrying regret, if you're haunted by the past, if you're wishing desperately that you could go back and do things differently. But here's the thing. The impossibility of return is what makes the present matter. If you could go back, if you could always undo, if you could constantly revise, then nothing would ever be real. No choice would ever be final, no moment would ever be precious, no loss would ever mean anything because you could always recover what was lost. The arrow of time gives weight to your life. It makes your choices matter because they can't be unmade. It makes the people you love precious because you won't have them forever. It makes this moment, this specific, unrepeatable configuration of matter and energy we call now, the only place where anything real can happen. The past is gone. The future doesn't exist yet. All you have is this, and paradoxically, that limitation is what makes this meaningful. Let me tell you about something I think about a lot. It's about ice cubes. You drop an ice cube in a glass of warm water, and you watch it melt. The cold spreads out through the liquid. The crystalline structure breaks down. The sharp edges soften and disappear. Within a few minutes, it's gone. Just slightly cooler water, slightly more of it, the ice cube has become something else. Now I want you to imagine that process running backward. The water suddenly getting colder in one spot, the molecules spontaneously arranging themselves into a perfect lattice, the ice cube forming out of nothing, growing, becoming solid and clear and cold. Can you picture it? No, you can't. Not really. Your brain rebels against it. It knows at some deep intuitive level that this is wrong. That water doesn't do this. That time doesn't flow that way. And here's what I find beautiful about this. Your intuition is correct. You know something true about the universe that no one had to teach you. You've internalized the second law of thermodynamics just by living in a world governed by it. You've watched things melt and mix and break and cool over and over your whole life and never once seen the reverse, and your brain has learned the pattern. The arrow of time is not an abstract concept to you. It's a felt reality. It's in your bones. Children know this too. You show a child a video of a glass breaking and then play it backward, and they laugh. They know it's wrong. They know glasses don't jump back together. They haven't studied physics. They haven't learned about entropy. They just know the way you know which direction is down. The arrow of time is that fundamental. It's part of the basic grammar of reality, and yet most of us spend our lives fighting against it, wishing we could go back, wishing we could undo, wishing we could stop the ice from melting, the coffee from cooling, the body from aging, the moment from passing. We're nostalgic for the past and anxious about the future, and we're never quite here, in the present, which is the only place time's arrow is actually pointing. But here's what I want you to understand. The fact that you can't go back is not a limitation to be overcome. It's the structure of reality itself. And once you really accept that, once you stop fighting against it, something shifts. You start to see that the present moment is not a way station between the past you're mourning and the future you're worried about. It's the only moment that exists. It's where you actually are, and it's where you have the only power you'll ever have, the power to choose what you do with this specific, irreversible configuration of now. There's a question people ask me sometimes, especially after they've been reading pop science articles about quantum mechanics. They say, but what about particles going backward in time? What about antimatter being regular matter moving backward through time? What about quantum entanglement and time-symmetric equations and all that stuff? And it's a good question. It's true that at the quantum level, things get weird. Particles can exist in superposition, effects can appear to precede causes, and the mathematics of quantum mechanics is largely time-symmetric. But here's the thing. Quantum weirdness doesn't save you from entropy. It doesn't give you a backdoor to the past. Because the moment you try to use quantum effects to do anything macroscopic, anything involving human-scale objects like your body or a time machine, you run into decoherence. The quantum superposition collapses. The system becomes classical, and classical systems obey thermodynamics. They increase entropy. They have an arrow of time. You can't hide in the quantum realm to escape entropy, because you're not a quantum system. You're a huge, macroscopic collection of trillions of particles that are constantly interacting with the environment, radiating heat, exchanging photons, generating information. You're about as far from a closed, reversible quantum system as it's possible to be. You're an open, irreversible thermodynamic system. And for open thermodynamic systems, the arrow of time is absolute. Even if somehow, through some miracle of technology or cosmic coincidence, you could arrange for your particles to quantum tunnel backward through time, you'd arrive without your memories, without your identity, without anything that makes you you, because all of that is stored in macroscopic structures that can't tunnel. You'd be a collection of atoms in the past with no coherent organization. Not a person, not a consciousness, just scattered matter that happens to have the same particles you have, but not in any configuration that means anything. The more you think about it, the more you realize that asking, can we travel back in time, is kind of like asking, can we unstir the milk from the coffee? In principle, If you knew the exact position and velocity of every molecule and could precisely manipulate them all, you could do it. But in practice, the information about which molecules were milk and which were coffee is lost. It's radiated away as heat. It's dispersed into noise. It's gone. And no amount of clever engineering can recover information that's been lost to entropy. This is what physicists mean when they talk about information loss. It's not that the information ceases to exist in some abstract sense. The molecules are all still there, somewhere. It's that the information becomes inaccessible. It gets scrambled into correlations that are too complex, too dispersed, too degraded to be reconstructed. The signal disappears into the noise, and once it's gone, it's gone. There's no undo button in thermodynamics. Now I want to talk about something that might seem like a tangent, but I promise it's not. I want to talk about regret, because I think regret is what happens when you bump up against the irreversibility of time at a human level. Regret is the feeling of wanting to go back, of wishing you could undo, of desperately yearning for a past configuration that no longer exists. And here's what physics tells us about regret. It's based on a misunderstanding of what time is. When you regret something, you're implicitly imagining that there's a version of the past that could be accessed and changed. That if only you had a time machine, if only you could go back, you could fix it. You could choose differently. You could save what was lost. But the past isn't a place where different choices are waiting to be made. It's a configuration that has already dissolved into the present. The choice you made is part of the causal chain that led to the you sitting here right now. You can't extract it without unraveling everything that came after, including yourself. This doesn't mean you can't learn from the past. It doesn't mean you can't wish things had gone differently. But it does mean that the past is not an option. It's not on the table. The only thing on the table is what you do next, in this moment with the configuration you've got. And that's actually incredibly freeing once you let it sink in. Because if you can't go back, then you're released from the burden of trying. You don't have to spend your energy wishing for the impossible. You don't have to torture yourself with counterfactuals about how things could have been different. They couldn't have been different because different would require a different past, and the past is fixed, not by decree, but by entropy. It's scrambled, it's mixed, it's gone. What you can do, the only thing you can do, is accept the present configuration and decide what you're going to build with it going forward. Because the future is not yet determined. The future is the space of all possible configurations you could evolve into from here, and while entropy guarantees that overall disorder will increase, it doesn't specify the path. There are many ways to increase entropy. Some of them involve creating beauty, meaning, connection, order in local pockets even as the universe as a whole becomes more disordered. You are one of those local pockets. You are a temporarily organized system extracting energy from your environment and using it to build structure, to grow, to think, to create, to love. And yes, eventually that organization will break down. Your body will fail, your consciousness will end, the molecules that make you will disperse and become parts of other things. That's entropy. That's the arrow. That's the price of having been alive at all. But right now, in this moment, you have the astonishing privilege of being a pattern that knows it's a pattern. A temporary ordering of matter that can reflect on its own temporariness. A tiny, brief violation of the universe's general trend toward disorder. And what you do with that, what you create, what you love, what you contribute to the other temporary patterns around you, that matters. Not because it will last forever. Nothing lasts forever. But because it's happening now in the only time that exists. Let me tell you about one more thing, and then I want to give you something practical. Something you can actually do with all of this. I want to talk about Einstein because people always bring up Einstein when we talk about time. And yes, Einstein showed us that time is relative, that it flows at different rates depending on velocity and gravity, that simultaneity is not absolute, that space and time are woven together into a four-dimensional fabric that can bend and warp. And this is all true. It's been confirmed by countless experiments. GPS satellites have to account for relativistic time dilation, or they'd give you wrong directions. We've measured time passing slower on mountaintops than in valleys. We've seen particles live longer when they're moving fast. Time is definitely not the simple, universal ticking clock Newton thought it was. But here's what Einstein didn't give us. He didn't give us a way to reverse entropy. He showed us that different observers can disagree about the order of events, that time can stretch and compress, that you can take different paths through space-time. But all of those paths still point from low entropy to high entropy. The arrow of time persists even in relativity. Your clock might tick slower if you're moving fast, but your coffee still cools, your body still ages, your memories still form in one direction only. There are solutions to Einstein's equations that allow for closed time-like curves, paths through space-time that loop back on themselves so that you could, in principle, travel into your own past. Wormholes, rotating black holes, certain exotic configurations of matter and energy. These are mathematically valid solutions. But they all require conditions that probably don't exist in our universe, and even if they did, they don't solve the entropy problem. You'd still be a thermodynamic system increasing entropy as you move along your world line, even if that world line loops back. And there's something deeper, something that makes me skeptical that these solutions are physically real, even if they're mathematically allowed. Because if backward time travel were possible, even in principle we'd expect to see evidence of it. We'd expect to see entropy decreasing in places. We'd expect to see cups spontaneously reassembling. We'd expect to see time travelers from the future showing up in our past. And we don't. We never have. The arrow of time is unbroken everywhere we look. Maybe there's a consistency principle in the universe that forbids closed time-like curves. Maybe the quantum vacuum fluctuations in the loops make them unstable. Maybe information conservation prevents it. We don't know for sure. But the evidence of our senses, the evidence of every experiment ever done, is that time flows one way. From past to future, from order to disorder, from birth to death, from the Big Bang to the heat death. And there are no exceptions. So where does that leave us? What are we supposed to do with this knowledge that the past is inaccessible, that time only goes forward, that entropy always increases, that nothing lasts, that everyone we love will die, that every work will crumble, that the universe itself will eventually run down into cold, dark nothing? Here's what I think. I think we're supposed to be here, fully here, in this moment, because this moment is the only place you actually exist. The past version of you is gone. It's been recycled into the present you, and the future version of you doesn't exist yet. All that exists is this breath, this heartbeat, this thought, this specific, unrepeatable, irreversible configuration of matter and energy that is you, right now, aware of itself. And being here, really being here, means accepting that you can't control the direction of time. You can't stop the entropy increase. You can't prevent the losses that are coming, but you can choose what you do within the constraints you have. You can choose what kind of order you create in your local pocket of the universe before it dissolves. You can choose how you treat the other temporary patterns around you. You can choose what meaning you make out of your brief existence. Let me give you some things you can actually do. Some practices that come out of understanding entropy and irreversibility, not as depressing limitations, but as the very structure that makes your life meaningful. First, notice irreversibility. Pay attention to it. Watch an ice cube melt in a glass of water. Really watch it. See how the sharp edges soften, how the cold spreads, how the boundary between ice and water blurs, and then disappears. Notice that this process only goes one direction. The water never spontaneously freezes back into a cube. Let this train your intuition. Let it remind you that the universe has a direction and you're moving in it, always, whether you like it or not. Do this regularly, once a day or once a week. Find some irreversible process, coffee cooling, sugar dissolving, bread toasting, ice melting, and watch it. Be present with it. Let it teach you about time. Let it teach you about impermanence, not in an abstract philosophical way, but in a direct, sensory way. This is what time looks like. This is what never going back feels like. This is reality. Second, make peace with closed doors. Think of one thing from your past that you wish you could change, one moment you wish you could return to, one choice you wish you could unmake, one person you wish you could see again. Feel the longing. Let yourself feel it fully, and then say to yourself, that configuration is gone, not metaphorically. The specific arrangement of molecules and energy and information that made that moment is now scattered across the universe in a trillion pieces. I cannot recover it. I cannot go back. And that's not because I'm weak or because I'm not trying hard enough. It's because going back is thermodynamically impossible. And then, this is the crucial part, let yourself grieve the loss without trying to fix it, because you can't fix it. The loss is real. The past is really gone, and pretending otherwise or holding out hope for some impossible reversal just keeps you from being where you are, which is here, in the present, in the only moment where you have any power at all. Third, practice presence through physics. When you notice yourself lost in nostalgia or regret, mentally rehearse this. The past is high entropy now. It's been scrambled, it's been mixed into the present. I can't extract it, but I can choose what I do with this present configuration. I can choose where I put my attention, how I spend my energy, what order I try to create in my local environment before entropy claims it too. This isn't toxic positivity, this isn't pretending the past doesn't matter. It's acknowledging that the past has become the present, and the present is where your life actually is. You're not in yesterday. You're not in last year. You're here. And here is where everything real happens. Fourth, create deliberately while knowing nothing lasts. This might be the hardest and most important one. Make something this week knowing it will eventually be destroyed. It could be anything. A meal that will be eaten. A sandcastle that the tide will erase. A drawing that will fade. A conversation that will be forgotten. A moment of kindness that will ripple out and eventually dissipate into the noise of the world. Let yourself feel the poignancy of its temporariness. Let yourself create it beautifully anyway, because this is what it means to be alive in a universe governed by entropy. You're not building monuments. You're not creating eternal things. You're making temporary eddies of order in the stream of chaos. And that's enough. That has to be enough. Because it's all there is. The universe is running from order to disorder, from the Big Bang to the heat death, from low entropy to high. And you're a brief flicker of consciousness in the middle of that vast unwinding. But you're a flicker that can know what it is, a pattern that can appreciate other patterns, a temporary ordering that can love other temporary orderings. And for a little while, before entropy reclaims you, you can make choices that matter precisely because they can't be unmade. So here's what I want you to take from all this. Time travel isn't impossible because we haven't discovered the trick yet. It's impossible because the past is not a place. It's a dissolved configuration. The broken cup doesn't just refuse to reassemble out of stubbornness. It refuses because there are vastly more ways to be broken than whole, and the universe always explores the more numerous possibilities. You can't go back because back has become now. The atoms that made your childhood self are still here, but they've been shuffled. They've been breathed and eaten and dispersed. Some of them are in you. Some of them are in other people. Some of them are in the air and the soil and the ocean. The pattern that was you at 7 years old is gone. Not tragically, thermodynamically. And the you that you are right now is also temporary. Tomorrow's you will be a different configuration. Slightly aged, slightly changed. A few more memories formed. A few more cells replaced. You're not a fixed thing traveling through time. You're a process. A pattern that persists for a while by constantly replacing its parts, like a whirlpool in a stream. The water that makes the whirlpool is always changing, but the pattern remains for a time, until it doesn't. This is what the broken cup reveals. Not just that time has a direction, but that you are that direction. You are the arrow. You are the process of order becoming disorder, of specialness becoming genericness, of life becoming death. And knowing this, really knowing it, doesn't make life meaningless. It makes every moment precious because it's unrepeatable, irreplaceable, and irreversible. You're not broken for living in a universe where everything tends toward brokenness. You're alive. You're conscious. You're here. And here is miraculous enough. You know what I think about sometimes? I think about the fact that the atoms in my body were once inside stars. They were forged in nuclear furnaces billions of years ago, scattered across space in supernova explosions, condensed into planets, cycled through oceans and atmospheres and countless living things before they became part of me. And someday they'll be part of something else. The carbon in my cells will be in plants, in soil, in other animals, in the air. The pattern that is me will dissolve, but the matter will persist, endlessly recycled in the great thermodynamic flow. I find this comforting in a strange way. I'm not separate from the universe. I'm a temporary configuration the universe is trying on, and when this configuration ends, when entropy claims me like it claims everything, I'll return to the pool of possibility. My atoms will be shuffled back into the deck, and maybe somewhere down the line some of them will be part of another consciousness, another pattern that briefly knows itself before dissolving back into the whole. This is the only immortality that's real. Not the immortality of the soul, not the immortality of fame or legacy, but the immortality of matter and energy, endlessly transforming according to the laws of physics. You can't preserve yourself, you can't freeze the moment, you can't go back, but you can participate fully in the transformation. You can let yourself be part of the flow instead of fighting against it. And maybe that's what wisdom is, not knowing how to escape time, but knowing how to be in it, how to accept the irreversibility without becoming paralyzed by it, how to create and love and strive even though everything you build will eventually fall apart, how to be a temporary ordering of matter that celebrates its own temporariness. The broken cup teaches this better than any philosophy. It shatters and it stays shattered, and you clean up the pieces, and you go on. You don't spend the rest of your life wishing you could glue it back together. You accept that it's gone and you use a different cup. Because there are other cups. There are other moments. The universe is constantly offering you new low-entropy states to care about, new things to love, new ways to create order before chaos reclaims it. This is what it means to be alive, to be a pattern that knows it won't last. To create anyway, to love anyway, to matter anyway, not despite entropy, but because of it. Because the arrow of time gives weight to your choices, finality to your actions, preciousness to your moments. Without it, nothing would mean anything. With it, everything means something, at least for now, at least while the pattern holds. So here we are. Here you are, in the only moment that exists. The past is gone, scrambled into the present by the relentless increase of entropy. The future doesn't exist yet, just a space of possibilities waiting to be collapsed into actuality. And right now, right here, you have a choice. Not about whether to move forward. You're moving forward whether you like it or not. That's what time does. But about how you move forward. What you create. What you love. What you contribute to the brief, beautiful, temporary order that is human civilization, human consciousness, human life. You're not broken for wanting to go back. You're human. But you can't go back because back has become now, and now is where everything real is. Now is where you are. And that's not a consolation prize. That's the whole game, the only game there is. So let me leave you with this. A kind of mantra, if you want to call it that. Something you can say to yourself when you're feeling the weight of irreversibility, when you're mourning the past, when you're wishing desperately that you could undo or redo or return. You can't go back, not because you're powerless, but because back is a myth. The past is not a place. It's a dissolved pattern, and you are not broken for living in the only moment that exists. You're awake, you're here, and here is where everything real happens. The arrow of time points forward because there are more ways to be ahead than behind, more ways to be broken than whole, more ways to be changed than unchanged. And you are the arrow. You are the change. You are the temporary ordering that knows it's temporary. And that's not a tragedy. That's the human condition. That's what it means to be alive in a thermodynamic universe. So be alive, right now, in this moment, because this moment is all you've got. It's all anyone's got. And it's enough. It has to be enough, because physics says there is no alternative. Now, if this changed something in you, if you're seeing time differently now, if you're feeling the weight and the freedom of irreversibility settling into your bones, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment and tell me about a moment you wish you could return to, and what it feels like to realize you can't. Not because I'm trying to make you sad, but because I think there's something healing in naming it, in acknowledging that the past is really gone and we're all here together in the present, trying to figure out what to do with our brief, beautiful, irreversible lives. And if you want more of this, more physics that matters, more science that touches the heart of what it means to be human, subscribe. Hit the like button if this resonated, because I'm here trying to explain the universe in a way that doesn't just inform you, but transforms you in a way that lands not just in your head, but in your lived experience. The universe has a direction. You're moving in it, and you can't go back. But forward is where all the possibility is. Forward is where your life is. So go there, be there, create there, love there, matter there, in the only direction that exists, in the only time there is, right now. Thank you for being here with me. Now go live in the only moment that's real.